Alright y'all, here's the tools you're going to need to do this conversion. A little masking tape, show you what that's for as we get on. A wood block, hammer, Allen key, a 7/16 wrench. Let's get to it. What we're doing today, converting the Hobie Mirage Drive with turbo fins to be able to do the 180 drive. Alright, so pieces you're going to need to do this conversion, of course, your old Mirage Drive. You need the Hobie 180 drive spine, set of fins. Whether you go with the turbos or the standards, these are the standards. The masts for whatever fins you're going with, and your pins that hold your fins on. Let's get started tearing down the original Mirage Drive and we'll go from there. I got my old Mirage GT drive. You notice the GT, it's got the gray drums on the side. It's got the roller bearings in it. First thing we need to do is remove our old fins. You don't have to do this step, it just makes it a lot easier. You got to take out these clevis pins and remove the fins. Alright, so you can see I started removing the fins. I got the first one off. These are the pins you need to remove right here. And you literally just slide your old turbo fins off or whatever fins you had, set them to the side so you don't get your parts confused, and we move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step is you want to get your 7/16 wrench, and on one side only you want to take off all three of your cable nuts. Remember to make sure how these cables went. Take a picture of it, whatever you got to do to remember it. It's also a good time to clean up your chain from all that grit and grime. Mine's got a lot of sand in it and all that from using it at the beach. So clean it up and we'll be good to go. You get these three nuts off, we'll take the next step. Alright, another thing I need to mention about these cables, I got my first nut off. Pay attention to, for later on, how many threads are sticking out of each of your cables to make reassembly of the new spine that much easier. And I'll explain why later on when we get to that step. So as you can see, I got my three nuts off. All we got to do now is gently pull your cables out. It might be a little stiff, you just got to kind of work them until you can get them out. Just gently work them out. Alright, so now you got your one side undone. You can pull your cables out, pull the chains off. It might be a little stiff because mine I didn't clean, but if you clean them they'll come off a little easier. Now you have to be careful with the GT drives because they have a bearing system inside of these drums. You want to be careful when you pull them off and then flip them over to make sure the bearings don't fall out on you. So we're going to gently slide this off. Check and kind of reach back there and see if any of the bearings are sticking out. Some are on mine, so I'm just kind of carefully guiding them back in. If they fall out, guys, it's not a big deal. You can always get them back in later. But I just prefer to make it easy. As you can see, I have all these bearings right here that are coated in grease. It helps make this drive a little bit smoother and more efficient. So you can set that off to the side. We'll get back to it later. Alright, here's a perfect example. Hopefully y'all can see it. Right in here where the bearings are kind of slipping out. You can kind of just reach in there with your fingers and push them back down as you're sliding this off to kind of help keep them from falling out on you and going everywhere. You just gently pull it out. So just pull the spine to the side and kind of just guide your bearing. See, I had a few pop out. We can get those back in later. Alright, so we got our old spine right here. We have two more pieces to take off this before we're done with it. One, you have the center pin. I wiped all the grease off of it, and I'll show you why here in a few minutes. You also have to get this idler pulley off. And again, this is where our Allen key comes in, right here. You have to take it off and gently pull the pin out, and there's also bearings inside this. So let me get to the next step, and we'll show you what you got to do next. Alright, so we have our Allen key going into the idler pulley stop screw. Just gonna back it off a little bit. Gently pull out our guide pin. Pull our idler pulley out. And again, it has bearings inside of it. We'll re-grease these and clean them before we put it all back together. Set that off to the side, as well as your pin. You're going to need that again. Now, all we got to do is remove this pin. Let me show you what we need that masking tape for now. Alright, so we have the masking tape. You have the center pin we still need to remove. when you remove it, you got to be real gentle with it. But also, more importantly, when you go put it in your other spine, it needs to be centered. Quick, easy way to do that is take a little bit of your masking tape, come on one side, real snug. Just make you a guide right here. That way you can knock it out. When you put it back in, you already know how far to go in, you'll be back perfectly centered. So, nice quick tip, make it a little easier on you. You can also use Sharpie on either side to get it lined up. For the next step, for removal, this is why we had the hammer and the wood block. You don't want to take this metal hammer and smack on this metal pin. You could damage it, then it's no good to you. Alright, y'all, as you can see, I knocked my pin out. Just took a couple swift blows with the hammer on that wood block and it came right out. No big deal. You're done with the spine. You can now set that aside. Save it for later if you ever decide you want to go back for some reason. Say your 180 drive fails for some reason, you can at least go back. Alright, so the first step, we got our new spine. We're going to reinstall our old set screw from the other spine. And we're just going to run it in a little ways. Mind you, it's a brand new spine, so it might be a little stiff going in at first. Just make sure you don't cross thread it. And run it in a little ways. We'll get ready to reinstall the idler pulley. Move on to the next step. Alright, y'all, we got our set screw in. We have our idler pulley and our idler pulley pin. I recommend cleaning off all the old grease, if any was on your Mirage Drive. I know mine is because I service mine like once a month. Clean your pin off, clean any excess grease off around your idler pulley. Now, the way this goes back in, you have a big side and a small side. Your big side is going to go towards the big side on your actual drive. It's slightly bigger than the back side. Alright? With your set screw, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a flat spot on that pin. You want to line that up with your set screw, because if you don't, it's not going to get tight enough. Now, I have some heavy duty grease I use here. Regular heavy duty high temp grease will get the job done. You can generously apply it to this pin. Set that to the side, big side forward. Slide our pin in carefully, making sure not to knock any of our bearing pins out. While at the same time trying to line it all up and make sure you got your flat piece facing your stop screw. Now you can take your Allen key and snug down that front idler pulley stop pin, and there it is. You have your idler pulley done. On the center pin, you want to put a little bit of lube, a little bit of that grease on one side of your main shaft here. Remember, we got the tape lined up. You literally just put it in until it stops on the edge of that tape. Peel your tape off, but we're going to put this pin back in. I got my wooden blockers, going to give it some more taps. Got to get it started. You want to be gentle with this. If it's not going in, you want to stop and kind of figure out what's going on. Going back in, but as you can see, we lined up our tape with the center mark again. So that's good to go. It's back in. Just a word of caution, it will go in tight at first. It's in, we can move forward with putting on our pedal legs. And alright, y'all, we got our two pedal pieces back. I cleaned the old grease out, and we have our new spine. What we're going to do is get us a little more of that grease. We're going to graciously lube down this spine pin. I just like to do this part, put a little on the ends of the bearings. Alright. The important part to remember is you want to assemble this like if you were sitting in a kayak. How you remember that is, look at the numbers on your pedals. I got them backwards right now. You want to be able to read the numbers and have that idler pulley to the front. Alright, y'all, so I got my first side slid on with the chains. Now we're going to slide on the other side. Bring your back chain apart. Now, another thing you want to do is figure out where your center chain link is, because you want to line it up with the center tooth on your sprocket. That way you don't have your fins all out of line. Alright, y'all, just a little cheat for you. On this sprocket, your middle tooth is going to be more squared off. Now you're going to have to count your chain links. There's 12 individual little center pieces. You have to go in between the two, the most middle one, and line it up with that middle part of your Just kind of lay your chain in there. It should just fall into place, guys. Alright y'all, so I got my first cable on, everything's lined up, and we got it in place. You gotta keep your first sprocket straight and your pedals relatively straight. Grab your first nut and just get it started on there. That way it doesn't fall off on you while you're assembling your other cables. You get that cable snug down. Remember, this is where your thread count came in earlier. And you just bring your nut in. You don't want them too tight and you don't want them too loose because it can affect how this drive unit works, guys. So remember that that thread count. That was y'all. This is where a second person could really come in handy. Trying to keep everything lined up once you get this second cable on, because if you get them crooked here, your fins are going to be crooked whenever you fully assemble this, and then you just won't be happy. You have to take it all back apart. Just kind of work that cable back in. It is a tight fit, guys, so just kind of work at it, get your cable back in, and put your other nut on. Spine lined up with our pedals. I got my second nut on. Only took me a few moments. Go. Both cables are on, both pedals are on. Let's move on to the idler cable. This one's pretty simple, guys. You're either going to bring it over, bring it up under the drum, and I find it easier to kind of work it through the hole first, and then line it up with everything. And bam, that was it. I mean, simple as that. Again, you're going to want to line up everything. For mine, on this one I had 3 threads exposed. Yours might be slightly different. Just remember what yours were, and your installation should go back together. Real simple, guys. Alright, so we got our chains on, we got our idler cable on, everything's snugged down to where we had it before. This is the next step. We're going to put our fins on and we're just about done. Alright, so first step, forgot to add in the beginning, you do need a crescent wrench, or a wrench that will fit this notch on this mast. Now, we're going to take our first mast, we're going to stick it in the hole, and it just screws on in, guys, pretty easy. Now you take that wrench, you want to snug these down just a little bit. You don't want them too tight. Move on to the next one. Snug, but not too tight. Now you have your masts on, you can take your first fin, slide it up. Take your second fin, slide it up. Clevis pin goes through. Now your keeper rings are going to go on this side with this other dot that's sticking up, this raised spot, because it keeps the keeper ring in place. Now this probably be a lot easier with some split ring pliers, so I'm just going to do it with my fingernails. Alright y'all, I got the clevis pins in. As you can see, I got the first one, second one's done. This is why you need your ring on the other side. You literally will just push that ring over that little clasp and it'll keep it up out of the way. Now, the only other step you have to do, and I don't have mine with me at the time, is your handles. They literally will just go in and screw in. You got your forward and your reverse, and they're a red and a green pull handle. Once you get those in, you are done. That's how you go from the regular old Mirage Drive to the 180 drive. Do it yourself, guys.